set. Okay, so we'll discuss. Okay, followed by that, we'll talk about the test and block codes, and then we'll conclude this. Okay. Okay, so we will write the system model for the phase. We'll stick to the same notation that we developed in the last class. Okay, so we're going to drop this subscript f, which takes f small f, which takes m distinct channel states because we switch the antenna. Okay, but now we're going to consider a phase diversity method where we have a channel H, M antennas, it's a vector, okay, and this Wn, we are going to change it, that is W1, W2 up till Wm. If it takes values 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 and so on, then it becomes antenna switching. Right? You select one of these antennas. These are the path gains associated with the antenna. So I think to be consistent, we'll call this alpha, alpha, alpha m. Okay, there are m paths corresponding to m antennas. Okay, and then there is a vector W. Okay, P transpose of this. Okay, and if you multiply alpha into Wn, if Wn is a vector composed of, let us say, for two antenna case either 1, 0 or 0, 1, you are going to select one of these two fading states, and therefore you end up with the amplitude corresponding to that particular time instant. Okay? Fine?
W vector will compose W1 to Wn, right?
That? Okay, this is the. Well, I just may also make this as a function of n. Okay? If I take for two antenna case 1, 0 or 0, 1, that is antenna switching. Is that right? At the receiver, you select one of the two fading states. Either alpha 1, alpha 2 or alpha m, depending on how you select these antennas. Right? Alpha into Wm, right? This is a row vector, this is a column vector. Okay. Now, like we said before, we don't have to restrict this to vectors of this kind, unit vectors 1, 0, 0, 1. Rather, we can make them much more general, and I'm going to take a particular form where W's are chosen to be arbitrary phase rotations. Okay? So, W I comma n is equal to 1 over square root of m e raised to j phase I comma n. N is the time instant, n equal to 1, 2, 3 up till whatever the length of the block. Okay, take a block of symbols. I is the antenna index. Okay, this is the form we restrict to. That is basically the weights are basically the phase weights. Okay, is that? That is a design parameter that we will choose. Okay, now we have a complete freedom to choose the values of phi. Okay, that is a design parameter. One example could be I can choose this vector wn in a given time instant. Let's say wn for a given value of n, I can choose it to be let us say u to the power of j phi 1 over square root of 2 for 2 antenna case. Well,
Simply module.
let's call this. I'll choose it as 1 comma 1, which is equal to the phases are 0 0, and then wn plus 1 as 1 comma minus 1. The phase is 0 pi. The phase is 0 0 0. You agree with this? That's one particular choice for the vector wn and wn plus 1. Wn plus 2 can be just same as 1.
You have to make it antenna switching.
It's not antenna switching. This is phase rotations. Okay, these are phase rotations. Follow me? No? Okay. All I am saying is that we'll make this for 2 antenna case. I'm going to choose wn as 1 1 for the even values of n, and then wn as 1 minus 1 with the 1 over square root of scaling for odd values of n. Is that a valid choice?
Are you trying to make them orthogonal?
No, we're not trying to make anything. This is just one particular choice. Okay? Well, yeah, what are the phase states you will see? Two phase states, alpha 1 plus alpha 2 and alpha 1 minus alpha 2, and then this 1 over square root of 2 is there just a power scale. Okay? And we have considered this already. I mean, we just put it in a slightly different framework. Okay? Because we need to derive the pairwise error problem. Does it make sense? I'm going to choose them arbitrarily, okay? But of course, you can't just choose them to be any phases. Okay, we'll come up with a design criteria in a moment. But right now, I'm going to choose them as 1 1, 1 minus 1 in consecutive time. So it only takes two values from the set 1 1 and 1 minus 1 with 1 over square root of 2 scaling. And for any given n, you choose one of the two. Okay? That is, the transmitter essentially is applying the following phase vectors on different antennas. Okay? We've done this before. Okay? Now, I could choose this from a vector, from a set with 4 elements. 1, 1, 1 minus 1, 1 j, 1 minus j, and those are obtained by configuring field case appropriately. Is that okay? Okay. So I could have another set. Of course, the order can be different. Okay, with a 1 over square root of 2 scale. So I can choose Wn to be either this, or this by setting the phase values appropriate. Okay? Is it okay? So all I'm saying is that this Wn could take many different realizations from the given set. That is in our control at the transmitter. So the weights applied at the transmitter. Okay. Now we'll just put this into pairwise error probability. Derive the pairwise error probability for this case. Okay. Stop me if you have any trouble with this. Okay. So now the pairwise error probability is the same minimum distance decoder that we employ as before. Okay, nothing really has changed. Only equivalent channel that you observe at the receiver had changed. This is the equivalent channel state. Remember we had alpha f, but now we have alpha into Wn, where is alpha is a vector and W and is another vector, this is row and this column vector, which gives you the equivalent channel state, which is varying with n, and is the time index from difference, and Cn is the modulation alpha beta associated with. Okay. The pairwise error probability defined as probability of error. K is the code word that is transmitted and the receiver decides in favor of CB given the channel alpha into omega n, which is known to the receiver perfectly. That is equal to Q of okay, Q of an argument, okay, Q of an argument and we had a double summation before, but I'm going to write it as a single summation here, and the argument will be written as well summation over n A minus CB absolute value square okay, and that is C N A, C and B, two code words, multiplied with what? Well, channel also has to come into picture, right? Alpha into Wn absolute value square divided by 2 n naught. This is a little different from the form we employed before, where see, we had two summations before, right? One corresponding to cap small f and n. We have broken this into two parts, right? The code word. Okay, we had m blocks, and within each block there were symbols, right? But here we don't view it as such blockwise fading. Here we created a system model where there is only one index n. Only one index n, whereas in the previous case we had Cf comma n, where f takes values 1 to m and n takes values from some other rings. Okay, here we don't make such distinction. Here, where we just have a single summation, and the receiver receives this and uses a maximal likelihood decoder. Okay, and if it makes a decision in favor of CB, the code word, and the pairwise error probability can be written as Q function of square root of square root of this particular distance metric, where this distance metric is accumulated over all n components, where the code word CA and CB are subtracted out, absolute value square, alpha Wn absolute value whole square. Well, wherever the individual elements of the code words are the same, though they don't contribute to the minimum distance, the places where the code words differ do contribute to the minimum distance as before. Okay? And these fading states, how many fading states we have now? Alpha into Wn, how many fading states we could potentially have? Well, you can have as many states as the entire block length. In the special case, we only have two fading states here with the given choice of W's here, but you could potentially, by controlling the phases, you can potentially have this equivalent channel state can vary as a function of n for the whole transmitted frame of interest. That is something in our control. You understand this? This channel state can be made to change with n, and if the change that we introduce is in our control. We can allow it to take only 2 values, 4 values, or any number of values, and they become correlated fading states in general. In some special cases, for example, here 1, 1 and 1 minus 1, if alpha is assumed to have complex Gaussian distribution, they become statistically independent fading states. Otherwise, more generally, they are correlated fading states. See this? Well, how many values you have in this case? Alpha 1 plus alpha 2, alpha 1 minus alpha 2, alpha 1 plus j times alpha 2, alpha 1 minus j times alpha 2, and depending on which state you select, by controlling the vector W, that particular state appears here with the corresponding Euclidean distance term, and then you sum them up.
What is the n, the meaning of n?
Well, n is clearly defined. N is the index, transmitted sequence index. There are n
in constellation, I have different CA, CB.
Yeah, that's what it is.
2 points of the constellation.
This changes from point. This could potentially change from point to point. It could be MRA modulation. It could be some QRA or SRA modulation, right? So it's just a constellation point. Yeah. This is one transmitted. This is the transmitted code word, and you make a decision in the favor of received code word in the trellis where you have an all zero path, and then you deviate and rematch. This corresponds to CA and this corresponds to CB, and you have the modulation sequence corresponding to CB, and you take the difference between them. Sometimes they will the elements are the same, sometimes they are different. Okay, so sometimes don't contribute, sometimes do contribute, and the total distance becomes the. Don't have the channel, then this is nothing but the D free for the code, the free distance of the chosen code. Okay, so really the framework is essentially same as before. We just altered the system model a little here to accommodate for the continuously varying channel, or rather, the channel is varying every n, not continuously but discrete instance.
Probability expression, it is given alpha omega n. So it is given particular n. And
no, this means I know the entire channel state information at the receiver. That's what it means. I know this vector alpha into omega n. That's what it means. Okay? There's no, forget about this. From the receiver point of view, it has no it doesn't. This is more or less, from the receiver point of view, it's a known term. Okay? Okay, so now the question that we want to ask ourselves is, what is the diversity order you get for this system? What is the coding gain that you get? What should be the design criteria? And by increasing the number of elements, number of these vectors, right? To be able to increase the diversity order. Don't ask questions like that. So let us say I keep increasing. So how many fading states we have? 4. Here how many fading states we have? 2. If I have, let's say, 8 fading states or 12 fading states, what is that we are going to gain? Will we increase the diversity order? That's the question we want to ask. Are we going to increase the diversity order? From 2 to 4, will we increase the diversity order to 4? Possible? Yeah, how can you? Because you only have 2 antennas. Fundamentally, the diversity order should be only 2. There is no way you can increase it to 4. Okay, they are all correlated states. But you may see a bit of a gain. You can view it as a coding gain because you cannot change the diversity order. Therefore, the gain that whatever little gain you may see, that may be viewed as a coding gain. Okay? So, what should be the design criteria then? Okay, how do you show that pairwise error probability term cannot have a diversity order more than m? How do you show that? This expression doesn't really tell you that, right? Does it? It doesn't say that. Okay, so what we will do is we'll take this and rewrite this in a slightly different form. Write this in a slightly different form, and then we'll show that we'll give a design criteria for that. Okay. Okay. So what we will do is we'll just call it some distance term. I'll call it d square comma a comma b. Okay, distance between portions of the distance between distance corresponding to forward CA and CB. Well, write in this following manner: alpha, some matrix U of k, some other matrix B, and UK Hermitian, and alpha Hermitian, where alpha is already defined. And D is a diagonal matrix with elements D1 square, D2 square up till, well, dp square. Define that p in a moment. Okay. And a vector composed of okay, you'll define some matrix UK composed of essentially columns Wn. Okay?
What is suffix case?
Is it? Sorry, UN here. Okay. Okay, change it to UN. Okay. So what are we really doing here? Although it looks a bit cumbersome, what we're really doing is quite simple. Okay, take this case of 4 elements. Okay, W n can take one of the 4 vectors, right? W can take any one of the 4 vectors. That's what we decided at the class. Decided that W n can take any one of the 4 vectors. Therefore, and you have a choice, you can arrange those switching vector, the phase vectors in this column format. One example could be probably an example. Okay, I am going to arrange them in particular column vector format. Okay, I am just arranging it, and with the understanding that W1 will take any one of the 4 possible elements of this sum set. Okay, so at the receiver, really, what is really happening? This takes any one of these 4 values. Is that right? Takes, it's a term here, takes any one of the 4 values. What we are going to do in the receiver is that, let's say alpha 1 plus alpha 2 will appear some number of times here with different weights. Alpha 1 plus alpha 2 will appear for n equal to 1, it may appear for n equal to 5, it may appear for n equal to 10, depending on where you have used it. This one, let's take a simple example where you sequentially go through this set. Okay, W1, W2, W3, W4, W5, W6, W7, W8, and then you cycle them. You cycle through this set. That means I start with alpha 1 plus alpha 2 here, and there is some weight here. After 4 elements, again alpha 1 plus alpha 2 appears, there is some other weight here. So for the entire code word, you collect the number of non-zero terms where alpha 1 plus alpha 2 weight appears. This could be 0, right? If the elements of the sequence, this is another sequence. Sometimes they may match and this component will be 0. When it is 0, alpha 1 plus alpha 2 fading state doesn't contribute to the minimum distance. So essentially, alpha 1 plus alpha 2 whole square appears some number of times with non-zero distance. So, and those are, and we add up alpha 1 plus alpha 2 whole square and the number of times it appears, we collect all those distances and add them to, let us say, d1 square. That is sum of all distances corresponding to the fading state alpha 1 plus alpha 2. So that's basically, essentially what we are saying is that this is the sum evaluated at alpha 1 plus alpha 2 where alpha 1 plus alpha 2 appears. That's what it is. So essentially d1 square is the term This is summation with the condition that this takes a value alpha 1 plus alpha 2. Well, similarly, this is the contribution where it takes a value alpha 1 minus alpha 2. These are nothing but Euclidean distances. If I sum up all of them, I should get the free distance of the code under AWG channel. Isn't it so? If I add them up, the free distance of the code, and what is the value of P? P is the number of elements in the code. So in this set. P is the number of elements in this set. Okay, so this is a diagonal matrix, and this takes this following form U, and this is U Hermitian, and this is alpha, and this is alpha Hermitian. That will be the total distance. Okay, and that is exactly same as this. I am writing it in a compact vector matrix form. If I expand this, what would I get? Alpha 1 plus alpha 2 absolute value square d1 square plus alpha 1 minus alpha 2 d2 square and so on and so forth. This term I am writing in vector matrix form by putting alpha 1 and alpha 2 as a vector, un as, let us say this one for this, let's say if you use two states, d. Is it okay? I'm just arranging it in vector matrix form. There's an advantage in doing so in a moment. I'll show you. NP, or I guess we should call it P maybe. NP is the number of phase states. Huh? It could be rectangular or it could be square. It's in our control.
And column should start with 2, 0. Both side in row and column, both is starting 5, 0, 2, 0, 2.
What was the definition? E to the power of P. Huh? I comma n. Okay, let's see the antenna index. This is 1. This is, if it is 0, this should be 1. So I think we should 0. Well, antenna index actually we didn't start with 0. We start with 1, 2, 3, and similarly here 1, 2, 3. Similarly 1, 2. Thank you. Indication should be, this is the antenna index, and
The other index should remain 1 now.
no, actually
1.
this is the antenna index, okay, and this is the time index. Well, basically it is equal to j phi I comma n. That is the matrix. Okay, I think it was written incorrectly. It is equal to j I comma n. The index is I comma n.
So,
Okay.
so last should be I comma capital N, not P.
It should be I is 1, 2 up till is 1, 2, 3, 3 comma. Then it goes on. Okay. Okay. Okay, one example I have written here. 1, 1. This is antenna 1. This is antenna 2. This is the time index. This is the index I. This is the index n. So n could be quite long, right? Well, actually, it's no longer n. It's just the number of states. 1 up to p states. Okay. Okay. From this expression, can I erase this? Okay. I'm going to do something here. Let's call this a matrix Q. Okay. Let's call it a matrix Q. What are the dimensions here? Well, UN is M by P, P by P, P by M, and this is 1 by M, and this is M by 1. So, here definitely P should be greater than or equal to M. Number of phase states should be at least equal to the number of ion mass. Otherwise, it won't work. I mean, you reduce the diversity. That you can always choose. P greater than or equal to M. Okay. Now this matrix Q, like we said, you can make it square and unitary if you want. You can make it square and unitary. That's in our control, right? So one example could be U of n for the case of m equal to 2 could have been chosen as 1 over square root of 2, 1, 1 and 1 minus 1. That is a unitary matrix. Okay? But in the case where we don't choose it to be unitary and you want to get a little more out of this pattern, you could choose it to be 1 over square root of 2, 1, 1, 1 minus 1, 1 j, 1 minus j. So something like that. That's obviously a rectangular matrix. Okay? With a different base strings. Okay? And you can sort of, well, basically they are points in some M-array constellation, right? 1, 1 is 1. If you have an M-array constellation, MPSK constellation, we choose this point, this, this. We can also choose this. We can also choose this and this. Right? That's what it is. And you can choose the constellation size to be arbitrary. So you could have any value of P. Right? 2, 4, 8. Okay? So now, if this is the case, more general rectangular case, we can employ an unitary decomposition on Q, okay, and write this as B Hermitian. I will do, not on this, but rather on the Q itself. Well, that's okay. We can put alpha here and alpha Hermitian here. And Q is written as B, D. I'll call it, I think I changed my notation here. So I'll call it some D bar, okay? I have to change that. Well, if U is unitary to start with, we don't have to worry about this. Don't have to worry about it. If U is in rectangular form, then you can always write it in particular form where V is a unitary matrix and D bar as the diagonal entries and Hermitian. Okay. So now again, once you do that, I think we are going to write this as we're going to write this as some omega vector d bar and omega Hermitian with understanding that omega equal to alpha into v. And what is omega? Omega is equal to a vector omega 1, omega 2 up till omega, well, not p, it is m, because alpha is a dimension 1 over m, and this will be a dimension. Well, what are the dimensions of Vd bar V Hermitian? Well, let's write it. Okay, this is 1 by, well, 1 by m, be m by m, and this will be m by m, and this is m by m, and we already said that p is greater than or equal to m. Okay. Well, this cannot be m by p because v is unitary, so it should be a square matrix. Okay, by definition it cannot be. Okay, so now this omega would be of dimension 1 over m, and this is 1 over m, and this is m by m. Well, there is a nice theorem that we have used before. If v is unitary and alpha is a complex Gaussian random vector and omega has same distribution as alpha. We have used it many times before. To restate it again. If alpha is a complex Gaussian random vector, well, basically it's a complex normal distribution with zero mean and variance, well, we can set it to be identical. Okay, it's a multivariate complex normal distribution with zero mean, variance, identity. What does it mean? The elements of alpha are just IID with zero mean and variance. If that is the case, and if P is unitary, then alpha is also complex normal, zero mean and variance. I mean omega is also complex normal, zero mean, variance, identity. Basically, omega has exactly the same distribution as the original channel alpha. Okay, that comes in very handy here because okay, now you can write this as summation over omega L absolute value square d bar L and L ranging from 1 to m. Can I do that? Well, that's what it is, right? Omega d bar is diagonal with entries, d bar is diagonal with entries, d1 bar up till m bar. So I will write it in a much more compact form. Omega L absolute value whole square dr. And what is the distribution of omega L? Complex normal, zero mean and variance, unity. It's an individual element of the vector omega. Okay. Now I will call it PEP and I will rewrite, and this would be written as, this part can be written as summation over omega L absolute value square d bar L square. I guess I have to put a square here just for notational purpose. I will put squares here. Divided by L equal to 1 to m divided by 2 n. Okay. And I started with un, which is already unitary, in which case p equal to m, that I could have chosen. Then I would have ended up with d bar equal to a. Okay. And what are these d's? Well, these distances are Euclidean distances collected on the fading states alpha 1 plus alpha 2, alpha 1 minus alpha 2, and so on, so forth. and alpha 1 plus alpha 2 is statistically independent of alpha 1 minus alpha 2 for the case m equal to 2. Therefore, omega 1 will be equal to alpha 1 plus alpha 2, omega 2 equal to alpha 1 minus alpha 2. For m equal to 2, e equal to 2, omega 1 equal to alpha 1 plus alpha 2, perhaps there is a square root of 2 terms. Omega 2 equal to alpha 1 minus alpha 2 by square root of 2. Exactly in the same form as antenna switching. No difference, right? Okay? That's a special case though. That's a special case.
Like the distance between two points.
All I have done is I have taken this and have rearranged everything in this form. That's all. We have done it for convenience. We have employed a vector matrix form to get here so that we can employ this unitary decomposition and do a further manipulation. We just done for convenience. However, this is the actual distance that was observed. Okay, we just changed it because we exploited the structure of alpha and omega n. And these are the diagonal parts. These are the other parts. Alpha un Hermitian, alpha Hermitian. Okay, that if you do some bookkeeping, you can show that. Okay, so if P is equal to M, the problem is mathematically equivalent to antenna switch, which we already handled, and there's nothing more new, nothing more to say. If alphas are complex curves and random. However, if P is greater than or equal to M, well, it changes. Okay, what is that that's going to change? Well, if you have two antennas and if you have only two fading states, it may so happen that D1 and D2 may be somewhat unequal and somewhat unbalanced. We said what is the design criteria? That these should be as equal as possible. The component Euclidean distance on different fading states should be as equal as possible. In this new system, well, you can still say that the component distances are as equal as possible among the four fading paths. Okay? Or rather, since we have more fading states, you can you have a little more flexibility in the code design, and ultimately what matters is D bar else should be as equal as possible, not necessarily D. But anyway, they are kind of related. They are not, there is a lot of imbalance between them that also propagates here. Okay? But the point here is that you can control the fading states throughout the frame. Okay? And this comes in a bit handy, especially when you have an imperfect interleaver. Theoretically, it doesn't seem like much, but when you have an imperfect interleaver, this comes in handy. What is an imperfect interleaver? If you have two antennas, we are going to switch between antenna 1 and antenna 2, not consecutive symbols, but in, let us say, in slots. Okay? And then you have an interleaver, some rule that kind of shuffles these modulation symbols, and you reshuffle them back. And at the receiver, we said that the design criteria is within the first error event, within the duration of the error event, you might want to have distinct fading states appearing together. You don't want the same fading state to appear within the first error event. Okay, we said that. But if the interleaver were to be imperfect, then you may see in some frames where the whole path, error event path, might see maybe only one fading state if it is very perfect. That comes in handy here because we have much more fading states. If not this will have four fading states. The likelihood of seeing either this pair or this pair or this pair or some combination within the error event path will increase. Okay. So it just comes in handy in a practical design where you improve the interleaver performance. Therefore, you try to achieve this as closely as possible given the rest of the constraints. Okay? Otherwise, mathematically, it's not a whole lot different from the previous case. But you do observe a little bit of a gain because you can fulfill this condition of making these distances as close as possible much more easily when you have more fading states at your disposal. Okay? In this case, P is 4.
M is 2.
M is 2. Yeah.
So we are breaking down a four
Two antenna system. It's never a 4 antenna system.
I mean,
But we got a virtual 4 antenna system with correlated states. We got a virtual 4 antenna system with correlated states, and after the unitary decomposition, again it comes back to a virtual 2 antenna system with a new fading state omega L and the associated distance. Yeah, that distance are also changed. Okay, so it gives a little more flexibility, that's all. But you don't want to change this too rapidly at the transmitter, like we said in an actual design. You want things to change slowly. So 4 time slots, you could easily employ this kind of phase rotations, okay, and have an arbitrary interleaver, and still make this work much better than the case where you have 4 slots, but you could switch between even and odd. So why not switch between 4 phase states and get a little more? Always the case. Okay. Again, the same old rule applies. The diversity order chord rate trade-off, right? If you have dl bar L square is 0 for some terms, then diversity order is no longer m-fold, but it is less than m. That again depends on the chord rate employed at the. Okay. So I would want you to simulate some things like this. Okay, because your simulator already supports this. Antenna switching with more antennas, same number of antennas and have more phase states, and see what sort of difference it is. The same reference paper is coding for block fading channel. That was for the antenna switching, and this is, I don't think there is any reference. Okay. But it's not too different from just a tweaked version. Okay. Well, some old notes I have, I'll try to look up. Okay. This back I have written it somewhere. Okay. So with this, we're going to conclude this whole long story about scalar coded diversity, which perhaps is worthwhile to spend because this also actually practically becomes WebM. In fact, we look at many things indirect. WebM with multipath channel is indeed just something like this. Isn't it so? Channels are created by the DFT of the original multipath. That's all. But of course, you don't have this luxury of controlling them at the transmitter. Channel gives you something and you have to live with it. And those states are given by the multipath channel, which is given by the nature. Exactly the same mathematics holds. No difference whatsoever. Only spirit is very much the same, with the exception that alphas are no longer right. They could be, right? They alpha 1 and alpha 2 are, if you take them as 2 taps, they could have unequal states. But if you impose this equal tap IID model, then the problem is exactly the same, except that the phase states are determined by the generalized DFT matrix. So these U's are going to take columns from a DFT matrix, generalized DFT matrix. Okay, so essentially OFDM is also, you can view OFDM as some type of, right, with this equivalent. Okay, and you can also use TDMA with frequency hopping, also belongs to this class. Let's say you have GSM which hops between F1, F2 up till you have four frequencies, and you have coding, and 4 slots, you have 4 frequencies, and each frequency you have a different fading speed. Right? GSM with flat fading, but well, not flat, but in the carrier it's flat, but it changes from carrier to carrier. Okay. So there is one more thing that you may be wondering why we spend so much time on these scalar co-diversity methods. That's because it sort of covers OFDM and TDMA in an indirect way. But there is what is called space-time block codes. Okay, there are what is called space-time block codes. They work quite differently. Okay, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on space-time block codes because I think the most useful one is the so-called Alamuti code, which is for 2 antenna case. Right, it's a very famous code, and we'll just briefly touch upon that. And leave out the rest of the block codes. Okay. And you could spend an entire semester on space-time coding, but there are other things to do. Okay. So we looked at one particular class of codes, right? And we looked at the mutual information, practical implementation. But there is another class. So we have symbols coming in, symbolically, there are symbols coming in S1, S2 up till so on and so forth. This encoder takes 2 symbols at a time, okay, and encodes them in this particular manner. This is time, this space, and then you transmit them on 2 antennas, and it goes through fading states alpha 1 and alpha 2, and at the receiver you receive on a single receive antenna, and then you have a that gives estimates of S1, S2, and so on. No channel coding involved in this setup, but this could have been the coded data sequence. But we are going to decouple coding and modulate conventional channel coding and the space-time coding as 2 different entities. Okay. Therefore, it is sufficient to consider space-time coding, and at the decoder output, our target is to get full diversity. In this case, it is 2. But if you have M antennas, you have an M array, you have some type of space-time coding matrix, and then you have some type of decoder, and you want to get full diversity. Okay. If you assume that the modulation symbols are complex, symbols for real and complex are little different. What is the rate of this code? Huh? How do you define the rate?
The rate
Number of symbols transmitted per unit time. How many symbols are transmitted in unit time? Well, there are 2 time slots. Okay. S1, S2. Well, in the second antenna, you transmit pretty much the same information in a flipped manner with conjugates. How many input symbols? 2 input symbols and 2 output symbols at any given in a pair of time slots or time instants. The rate is, it's called a rate 1 space-time. That is the number of complex valued symbols transmitted per unit time. Rate is defined as coding rate. Yeah, this is different from coding. If you had a code here, that would have another rate. Then it will be, the rate will be same as the actual coding rate. Number of complex valued symbols transmitted per unit time. Okay, if it is an OFDM system, you can also treat this and employ it on different subcarriers which are close. Okay, not looking into that right now. Okay. Well, it's highly non-trivial design. It looks like a very simple design to start with, but it's not so. We'll see that in a moment. Okay? Not as simple as it looks, and there is a story behind it, but we'll discuss the story later. Fellow Saiva Shalamoti was working for AT&T when they wanted to design this so-called space-time transmit diversity system, and he stumbled upon this design. Well, he just started scribbling. So he tried many things, and he started with S1, S2, and then you put S2, S1 back here. Okay, and he started doing something at the receiver. That didn't work. Okay, we'll see that. Negative sign and conjugates play a very important role. Okay. In fact, in linear algebra, there's a lot of literature which is probably more than 100 years old. There is what is called Hurwitz-Ruthan criteria for designing. See that there are so-called orthogonal matrices. Okay, come to that in a minute. Okay, let's write the received signal. R1 is equal to, well, this goes to alpha 1, right? The symbol. Alpha 1, S1, we'll just work with a pair, okay? A pair of symbols. R1, that is basically RT1 actually. So we'll call it RT1 is equal to alpha 1 S1 plus minus S2 conjugate alpha 2. Okay? And then RT2 is equal to alpha 1 S2 plus alpha 2 multiplied by S1 conjugate. Of course, noise is there, NT1 plus NT. Okay? First, I'll give the exact decoding procedure. Then I'll explain if you don't play some tricks at the receiver, in fact, you can't really decode this problem. Okay? And the trick here is you take the second received signal or sample, whatever you may call it, and you have to conjugate it. RT2, you must conjugate. If I conjugate this, I get alpha 1 conjugate, S2 conjugate, plus alpha 2 conjugate, S1, plus NT2 conjugate. Now we are going to stack up RT1 and RT2 in a vector form, which we call R, and this could be written as, okay, so I can write it as S1, S2 conjugate, alpha 1 minus alpha 2, alpha 2 conjugate, alpha 1 conjugate, right? Is that right? Yeah. Plus NT1, NT2 conjugate. Is that right? This can be written as some H into S plus N. So H is a 2 by 2 matrix, S is a 2 by 1, and this is 2 by 1. And you should readily verify that H is an orthogonal matrix or orthonormal matrix. So what does it mean? H admission is You evaluate and tell me. Head down and tell me HH Hermitian. Well, I guess the constellation could be normalized with 1 over square root of 2. That could be taken as the variance of the points. Okay. Okay. So H Hermitian H is alpha 1 absolute value square plus alpha 2 absolute value square into identity. Well, in linear algebra, you want to design this space-time coding matrices. Well, actually, this is space-time coding is for our purpose, but from linear algebra point of view, you want to design these matrices such that H Hermitian should be basically the norm of the squared norm of the matrix. Okay, that is basically sum of squares of alpha. Yeah. Okay, but unfortunately, this construction exists only for 2 antenna case if the transmit symbols are complex. Beyond this, rate 1 constructions do not exist, period. Beyond 2 antennas, rate 1 constructions do not exist. That means you have to sacrifice the rate. Okay? Well, if you just do S1, S2, and if you do my S2, S1, and you can work it out, you will not be able to get to this. What is the significance of H Hermitian being a scaled identity? Well, the receiver is, you put H Hermitian, which is a match filter, space-time match filter, or H Hermitian H, which is scaled identity plus H Hermitian N, and you can show that the signal to noise ratio for the system, SNR, for each stream can be shown to be alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square absolute value divided by N. Well, there will be square of this, but then there will be alpha 1 plus alpha 2 square, that is the variance of n tilde, and they cancel up and you end up with this. And there should be a variance of expected value of SI square, and that should be half in this case because you have to normalize the transmit power to unit. Okay? You have to choose it to be half so that the transmit power is normalized to unit. Okay. So what is the diversity order now for this system? Well, it's a perfect second order diversity, and we don't have to worry about the code because we simply pass it through the decoder and have implemented this. Exactly. The Genie you have implemented is a virtual space-time decoder. Genie which you have implemented is a virtual space-time decoder, and you have already seen that antenna switching with rate half code is arbitrarily close to this space-time block. This better. What is that? Half a dB better. Yeah. Well, in 1998, we introduced something like antenna, not antenna switching, phase, something that belongs to a scalar coded transmit diversity in IS95 CDMA 2000 standard. Okay, this is something we introduced from Motorola, and it was also introduced in 3G. Then suddenly, Almotiv's paper has surfaced, and then Texas Instruments read this, implemented it, and they wrote a proposal to 3GPP, and they yanked out our code from the 3G standard and they replaced it for the famous 3D BGN. I lost out there. However, CDMA 2000 standard, it is still there. The name is called space-time spreading. Okay, there is some tweaking here. And not space-time spreading, there is what is called orthogonal transmission. That's the name we coined back. Because space-time block codes were not invented in those days, whereas the other class of codes is sort of easy to implement. Okay? But in any case, then a decade later, I met Almoti, we had a fight in WiMAX, and his code was already there in the standard, and again, I introduced this so-called phase rotation diversity in OFDMA in a two-dimensional manner, and we asked them to totally remove this Almoti code from the standard, saying that it is inferior than phase rotation code. How so? Well, what happens is that, in this case, you explicitly have to train two antennas, the pilots, okay? Whereas in phase rotation diversity, you do have to, in a way, train two antennas, but you can design it such that you exploit the structure in the standard. You send one slot, alpha 1 plus alpha 2, you send another slot, let us say, alpha 1 minus alpha 2. The receiver does not even know that some phase rotations have been applied. So you don't make any changes whatsoever in the receiver, and you don't even change the pilot structure which is already present. And in fact, you can introduce any number of phase rotations in a two-dimensional manner in OFDMA and make the receiver immune to these changes. And it turns out that the channel estimation error in certain setups is less for this phase rotation code because it's a virtual single antenna system. Whereas this is a two-antenna system, and it turned out to, considering all these other effects, this turned out to be worse from a network point of view. Okay. Moreover, if you have some sort of a co-channel interference and if you want to null it, that gets a lot more complicated here because you have another term which has the same structure as this HS. Now you have to deal with two symbols and things get a lot more complicated. So finally, he agreed to put the second code in as another mode. Okay, but that's a political decision. Just to please some of us, he did. So, but this guy in Almoti is a very nice guy. Now he no longer does these kind of things. He's Vodafone. He is the R&D head of Vodafone globally. But at some point we used to work together, and he's called father of WiMAX. Okay, and WiMAX is dead now. So child died. So person without a son. But anyway, he's a very nice guy. Anyway, but this code, so-called famously celebrated Almoti code, really opened up this field of space-time code. Then his friends at AT&T Labs, they picked up this elementary code, and then they came up with the generalized construction for arbitrary number of antennas and so on and so forth. And that again triggered a lot of activity in this field. Okay, but we're not interested in all those other details. But the point here is that there are fundamentally there are two different classes of codes: space-time block codes and scalar code diversity method. And there is one more annoying code, but it's called space-time trellis code. Okay, but actually that is a paper that triggered enormous activity. Okay, but they are not very useful codes except for the simplest form of space-time trellis code, which is delayed diversity code. Again, can be viewed as a form of scalar code diversity. Well, space-time trellis code is somewhat related to trellis code modulation, and we all know that trellis code modulation is something some of us don't like in cellular systems. Okay, the space-time trellis codes are not compatible with outer channel codes, whereas scalar code transmit diversity is very much integrated into conventional channel coding framework. It can be easily incorporated. This is a form of a space-time trellis code. Why is that? Well, the decoder can be represented as a trellis with, well, how many states? What is the optimum decoder for this? XK goes through a virtual two-tap channel, and if you employ Viterbi algorithm, what is an optimum decoder? Well, what is the memory for this system? 1. And what is the number of states in the Viterbi decoder? Well, if it is binary, it is 2 states. If it is MRM or some SRA modulation, the number of states is, well, yes. More generally, for NT antennas, the number of states required is not NT and M antennas, S raised to M minus 1 states. You need to implement a MAP or MLSE, maximum likelihood sequence estimation, for this course. The optimum receiver, or so-called optimum receiver from non-encoded sense, is a maximum likelihood sequence estimator or MAP sequence estimator with M caps, and the memory is M minus 1, and the modulation size is S, and the number of states is S raised to M minus 1. This is what we discussed in the other tutorial, right? So this is a one form of a space-time trellis course. Okay? And these people at AT&T Labs, they combined, they sort of complicated the shift register by introducing more memory. And they showed that some coding gains are possible. While the coding gains can be obtained, a moderate coding gain on the order of 3 dB, by sort of viewing as a space-time convolutional code, okay? But they're generally incompatible with the turbo codes or LEPC codes that you want to use here. So they're not really, they didn't really take off because sort of it's a nice concept, very elegant, but nevertheless in practice it's not very useful except for the delay diversity code, which you can always employ, and you can also employ a class. If you want, go and get it. You don't have to come and discuss. Okay, so you can also employ an MMSC linear receiver or an MMSC DFE for this class of trellis course. Or you can have a non-linear maximal likelihood sequence estimator or MAP sequences. This is a very special case. It even allows a linear filter at the receiver to recover. But if you introduce more memory and make it as a space-time convolutional code here, the only way to recover it is do some sort of a Viterbi algorithm, and you have to have a non-linear receiver to get the coding in as well as the diversity gain at the output of the decode. It's a completely different class of space-time. It's called space-time trellis codes. Not so useful. Okay. So let's take it out of the picture. The simplest case is delay diversity code, and we can happily relate it to the class of scalar space-time, scalar Fourier transmit diversity methods. Okay, which is totally compatible with MMSE and MMSE DFE as well as MLSE. On the other hand, there are space-time block codes, and they are notoriously incompatible with multipath channels, frequency selective channels. Imagine this code being transmitted over a frequency selective channel. It completely loses the orthogonality properties, sort of, and decoding becomes extremely complex. Now you have to observe 2 symbols at a time and decode an MLSE, and the complexity would be S raised to 2 times M minus 1. S square is the super constellation, right? S is the constellation size. You have to observe 2 symbols at a time, and S square is the effective modulation size, and M minus 1 is the memory. So that's the decoder complexity if you have to employ this over a frequency selective channel. But then again, people always come up with tricks. There is what is called a time reversal space-time block code, where you send a time slot, this over a time slot T1, sequence over a time slot T2, and minus S2 star implies reversing the sequence S2 and conjugating it. S1 is totally conjugating it. Then there exists a linear receiver that also performs RP1 conjugation and time reversal at receiver, and then you do match filtering, not in this sense but in D domain or Z domain. Okay, and that captures spatial diversity fully, and the multipath frequency diversity again has to be captured by a linear MMSE or MMSE DFE or MLSE receiver, preceded by a space-time filter. Okay, so originally this code was invented or developed for flat fading channels or channels without ISI, Well, you can use it in OFDM, which is flat within a frequency domain. But in TDMA systems, if you have to pass this code through ISI channels, it didn't work for a while, and then somebody came up with what is the name of the code is Lindskog Paul-Ross code. There's a guy by name Lindskog and then our friend Paul-Ross. Together they developed this code called time reversal, space-time lock. Time reversal, space-time block code. The trick is very simple. You implement this code in D domain or Z domain. So I call this S1 of Z, S2 of Z, S2 star, Z inverse, and S1 star, Z inverse. There you go. Then you get a nice code which retains the orthogonality property. Okay. I think I'll put a star here. You have to implement this in Z domain. Okay. That if done in an appropriate manner, then you can sort of see this alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square, whereas alpha 1 is again a frequency selective channel. You get alpha 1 Z, absolute value square, alpha 2 Z, absolute value square, and then you have to equalize to get again diversity from alpha 1 Z and alpha Z. So what is the total diversity order for this case? Well, I mean, I didn't tell you the channel length. Channel length, if it is L taps, 2 into L taps. Okay? That has nothing to do with the channel coding and all, right? This is totally signal processing. So there are fundamentally two classes of codes. One that relies on coding extensively, and the one that relies on sort of is still you can view it as either coding or signal processing, either way. But the receiver is totally relying on signal processing. That is, you are not involving, too much of channel decoding. So the line between signal processing and coding is sort of blurred in systems that employ transmitting. Sometimes you can emphasize this whole space-time coding as a coding operation. Sometimes you can view it as a totally signal processing operation. Sometimes you use a mix of them. Of course, decoding is always involves signal processing. Okay. With that, we'll close this entire discussion on transmit diversity. And in the next lecture, we'll talk about Teletar's paper on capacity of multi-antenna Gaussian channels. We'll spend some time on closed loop transmit diversity, beamforming, spatial multiplexing, MSA receivers. Okay. Then we'll move on to multi-diversity.